The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and not of DoD or any of its components.
Take me to the countryside. Gotta get out of these city nights. Drinking my cup, got me feeling right. Gotta get out of these city.
What's going on, everybody? Hey, so this is the first episode of what we're going to call the weekly or as required. That's your W1R check. So I was talking to one of my good friends and quite frankly a mentor of mine, a guy named Aaron Paul, Senior Chief, soon to be Command Senior Chief. I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed. He's advised me on a lot of stuff over the years, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is the plans for this podcast. And he's got a lot of great ideas, and quite frankly shows a lot of confidence in me that maybe I don't even have in myself. Right? He kind of talked to me about putting some stuff on film or writing essays or things like that in years past. And, I kind of shrugged it off. And I think part of it is that we think that we don't have, the credibility to go out there and share things. But, the more I thought about it, you hear this thing, imposter syndrome and all that stuff. And maybe you think your value isn't quite what it is. Look, I don't have it all figured out. And that's not just me being humble. I truly recognize that. But man, over these last 20 years and really over the course of these last 42 years, I've gained some insights, I think, into life. So anyways, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate you, man, for having some faith in me and telling me to, get out there and do some of these things. So the weekly or as required. So this will be kind of a branch off. There's going to be a few of these with the Rising Sun podcast. Our main theme is going to be our interviews / conversations with friends, family, interesting people that we've met along the way. But then we're also going to do, the Texan Connection with Matt Frugier. We're going to get a teaser done for that this week and get it out there. And quite frankly, I was on my walk tonight, so I was out, doing my hour and a half because I skipped 45 minutes. Long story short, I had to make it up, so I did an hour and a half walk. And on that walk, I was thinking to myself, man, some pretty cool stuff happened to me today that I'd like to kind of talk about, but there's not a planned format for that with the Rising Sun podcast. So I thought to myself, I was like, man, W1R. So if you don't know, if you're listening to this and you're not Navy, we have our 3M program. It's our, planned maintenance program for the Navy and, schedule maintenance. It's the way that we maintain all of our gear in the Navy. And there's a series of checks. There's different checks. There's dailies, there's weeklies, there's monthly, semi-annually, all these things, right? And one of them is a weekly or as required. And so the thought occurred to me that, sometimes I'm just going to have something that I want to say, right? And I didn't plan on doing much solo stuff with this podcast. I want it to be about the guests, but some of the feedback I've received, and thank you for everyone that gave me some feedback. Some of the feedback I received was that, sometimes just getting on solo and talking about whatever is valuable. So I thought that I would do that tonight, and I think that that's going to be kind of like a branch off, right? We'll keep it short, 30 minutes or less, and I just want to talk about maybe something that happened today that I thought was important or that I learned a lesson from and that I can share with all of you. And hopefully, you'll take a note or maybe you throw it into your toolkit and use it in the future. So weekly or as required. Sometimes it'll be a couple times a week, but at least weekly I'll get on and do a W1R podcast or episode of the podcast. So what happened to me today? So, in my job, I do check-ins, check-outs. I know there's a lot of people out there that, are potential listeners that are listening to this or watching this that know exactly what I'm talking about. It seems like a big part of your job sometimes is checking in new personnel and then checking them out on their way out. This is a real valuable process, especially in a leadership position because, you have that face-to-face at the check-in especially, right, where you get to tell somebody what the expectations are, what the standard is. And, it should be the standard across the organization, but sometimes, we have differing standards from ship to ship, command to command. I mean, that's just the reality of it. We're trying to improve that. There's some programs that are coming down the pike that are trying to improve that. But bottom line is that check-in process, especially with the senior leadership in the command, whether that's your LCPO or your CMC, your XO, your CO. That's the first time that we get to tell sailors, hey, this is what we expect of you. Here's the standard. Here's what I want you to achieve while you're here. And it sets the tone for their time there. Right now, they get to make a lot of individual decisions. It's who they surround themselves with. There's all kinds of things that can influence how they end up doing at that command, at that organization, at that place of business, whatever, right? But at least we, set them on the platform to say, here's the trajectory that we want you to take and that we're going to support you to take to be successful. And then the other part is, over a 2-3 year period, you get to see these folks, they blossom and they grow and they learn, they mature and they advance in rank and they just become, better human beings. And I'm going to sidetrack here. So Mike Haas, another one of my mentors, he's a retired Master Chief, Master at Arms. Mike, I don't know if you're listening to this or watching it. You're probably too busy playing with Blinky. But if you do see it, so what Mike always told us was, he said, look, of all the things that are important, and so what is it that it's our number one responsibility to do? And what he used to tell me was that the number one responsibility of any leader, specifically, a Navy chief or an enlisted leader, is, the mothers and fathers of the nation are sending us their kids, right? And they're adults, but they're their kids, right? Or the family or friends or wherever they come from. And our responsibility is to take that person and make them better by the time that we're done working together. Maybe they transfer to a different command, or maybe they go into the civilian sector. And I got a lot of things that I think about that. I think it's great. I think we need more mature, responsible people integrating into the society. They're veterans, but I digress. The most important thing you can do is to improve upon that person, right? Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to make sure that they're better prepared for whatever that next thing that they're going to do is, whether it's college or a job or a career or increased responsibility in the military. And so what Mike always told us was you have to make sure that you have that focus in mind. Whatever I get, whenever that person leaves, they need to be better than when they got here, right? That's not always going to be the case, but I'd say in most cases it is, right? You see these people, these folks, these sailors, they grow, right? They grow significantly, and it's really probably the best part of the job. So you fast forward a couple years, 3 years, and you end up getting to do a checkout with this person. And so today I checked out with one of our guys, first class petty officer. He's heading down to a much bigger responsibility. I'm going to keep ship names out of this and his specific details, but needless to say, he's heading to a bigger responsibility. And, one of the things that he asked me, he said, I feel like I come off arrogant. How do I fix that? And I'll tell you, if you know me, especially if you knew the young Dean Howland, even in my older age, I have certainly struggled with that throughout my career. Some people call it hubris, overconfidence, arrogance, cockiness. And I'll tell you, you get beat down enough, then you stop with that, right? And it's not even about the getting beat down. It's that you realize that it's unnecessary, right? It's uncalled for. And one of the guys that I worked with on my last ship, I won't say his name because he might not want me to, but he used to talk about this idea of stoicism. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, I've heard this or talked about it, but this stoic nature, right? This ability to endure hardship without showing, emotion or pain, right? And so if you look up the definition of stoic, that's kind of what it is. Like, I can take hard things and, endure them, right? But I think you can apply that in another sense, that is, you take the really exciting times also and have that stoic demeanor, right? It's okay to celebrate and be happy and be excited and, give each other high fives. But, that should be a fleeting thing, right? Like, all right, hey, good job. Let's enjoy what we did, what success we had, but then you pack it up and you move on, because if you don't, then you're going to find yourself riding that success. And then you get into this idea of I'm better than I think, or I think I'm better than I am, right? And that can transcend the individual. That can, that can affect your division, your department, your command, right? Your AOR. And if you rest on your laurels, if you have this kind of cocky, arrogant attitude about how good you are or about how good your organization is, not to say you shouldn't celebrate victories, but when you have this super, rosy outlook on things, well, that's where you can get sideways a little bit, right? So all these things I'm thinking about, right? And I'm talking to him. I said, look, here's the most important thing you can do. You show up and you go to work, right? And he's a first class petty officer, so he's got a lot of things that he's going to have to do. Being involved in the command and supporting. Training teams and things like that. I said, but guess what, man? The first thing you need to do is you show up and you get to work, right? Because he is a squared away, motivated, smart, sharp sailor. And I told him, I said, look, they're not going to give you a program that's succeeding, right? They're going to see a guy that is capable, motivated, has a good track record and reputation. You know what they're going to do? They're going to put you into that one section that's really struggling. Right. And he kind of looked at me. I was like, yeah, that's what I would do. Right. Because I want to take that fresh energy and enthusiasm and point it at something that needs help. Right. And so anyways, that was the conversation we had, about checkout and or at our checkout. And I thought it was just valuable. Right. So I think that, let's make sure that we're not being too cocky, not too arrogant. Let's make sure that we're, taking our wins, but realizing that those wins can turn into losses real quick if we take our sights off of what the goal is, right? So, anyway, so that was the one thing, right? I wanted to talk about the checkout. The other thing I wanted to talk about is this idea of, the rising sun, right? So some of the feedback that I got was real good about that, right? I thought it would feel kind of weird maybe, but it's starting to feel better and better, right? Because I think it resonates. And look, I'm not trying to be like, gender biased, right? I am a son. And this podcast is certainly for everybody. I mean, all inclusive. If you like what you hear, if you're interested, hey, son, daughter, whatever, don't care, right? But this idea of rising, right? I hope that resonates with all of you. I don't care if you're 20 or if you're 50. The idea in this life is to not settle, right? Don't be done. Never be finished, right? Continue to grow. Always be becoming. One of my mentors, actually a mentor for my CMC Cobb class, JJ Gonzalez, right? You should always be in a state of becoming, right? So I am never who I am. I am always becoming who I'm going to be, right? And that's kind of this idea of the rising sun. Trust me, I am still growing. 42-year-old man, and I am growing maybe more recently than I have in a long time, because I think I'm open to the idea of growth and new horizons and new experiences and challenges, and just not allowing myself to become stagnant, right? And so I'll challenge you to do the same thing. Do that thing that you've wanted to do, but you've been hesitant to do. And that can be physical, that can be emotional, that can be having that conversation with your dad that you never had. That can be, starting a podcast, right? Who cares? Honestly, if nobody watches this, that's okay, right? If one person watches it and gets something from it, then mission accomplished. That said, I will say this. There has been a pretty tremendous response just based on, the teaser that came out. And I appreciate that. I encourage you to keep watching it, and listening and watching on YouTube, whatever you're doing. And I promise you I'll continue to bring good content and hopefully a positive message, right? There's a lot of negative stuff out there, whether it's on social media, the news, and even in the podcast world. There's a lot of real negative stuff. You're not going to get that from me, man. What I tell you is you're going to get positivity all the time, okay? And we just keep this shit moving, right? So, all right, so that's it. I hope you enjoy all the different colors that I got going on here. So again, my homeboy Frank. He helped me set this up. Frank's an amateur. He's not an amateur. That was messed up. I'm sorry, Frank. He is an up-and-coming director, and I'm going to have him on the podcast here in a couple of weeks. He'll be episode 2 probably. Anyway, so he helped me set up this lighting thing here in my house. I am here in my apartment in Masawa, but you wouldn't know it, right? It looks pretty fucking fancy, right? So shout out to him again, and again, coming up, we're going to have Matt on. And then, no kidding, 28 Feb, episode 1 drops with Joey Meininger. You don't want to miss that. So if you like what you're hearing, what you're seeing, hit that like button on YouTube. Throw a comment in there. I want feedback. I want you to tell me what I can do better, what you like, what you don't like about the show, so I can adjust to make sure that it's getting you what you need. And then, also on Spotify, make sure you subscribe. Get notifications whenever a new show comes up, because who knows, man, I'm doing this by the seat of my pants. I might just hop on here anytime, right? But I'm gonna try to keep it to the weekly 1R, right? I'm gonna try to keep it to the W1R weekly or as required, but that as required gives me permission to go and do something if something really resonates with me and I want to share it with everyone. Okay, so that's it. It's Tuesday night, so it's time for dinner and work tomorrow. Happy hump day to everybody in Japan for tomorrow. And if you're in the States, have a good first day back at work. And that's it. I'm out. Have a good night.